readers, my name is Charity, the host of Birchivert Reader Podcast. I'm introverted, but willing to talk about fantasy books. On this podcast, I'll do book reviews, author interviews, and fantasy book discussions. Come join me every week as I explore new realms and talk to amazing people. I am with Bookish McGee. She's a awesome bookstagrammer. We recently did a podcast episode about Broken Bonds, and I invited her again. And we are going over the phenomena of Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I was surprised about how explosive this book is on Bookstagram. When you go on Goodreads, it's one of those rare moments, too, where there's like 87,000 reviews and it's 4.7 average stars.
Wow, that's a lot of reviews.
Yeah, a lot.
Good for her. Good for Entangled. That's good.
I know. She just, from what I did my research, she does a lot of romance books, and this was her first fantasy book. So
she did it. She did that thing.
She did it. So I wanted to ask, because I jumped at the train. I just okay, I'll just do it, because it's fantasy romance. So I'm all about that. What brought you to this book specifically?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I actually got approved for the audio arc. Yeah. So I started it and I was about 9% in and I was like, okay, because it's the beginning of the book. I'm like, okay, I got a feel for this. At the time, I was starting to enter into my, I don't know, I guess maybe summer a rom-com. I was kind of deep in that. So I was like, okay, I get what this is going to be. And, I'm excited to try it out. I'll come back to it. Right. And then next thing, I'm seeing it everywhere. And I'm like, okay, I got to give myself a little bit of space because now there's a lot of expectation and a lot of hype in this book. And if hype. Yeah. And if I go in sometimes with that expectation, it's harder for me to just enjoy the book. And it's more like, well, this is it, So I gave myself a little bit of space and then finally did read it or listen to it. And I did not stop. I kept listening to it the whole entire time. I didn't put it back down. So I went from 9% to just finishing it. It was really good. It was so well edited. The first thing that I was thinking about while I was reading this book is how the editor just killed it, because there is nothing wasted in this book. There is no info dumps. There is no exhaustive world building. There is world building in it, and I like world building, but they managed to make it seamless. It wasn't okay, this is going to be a couple chapters about stuff that I'm going to have to really focus on to make sure I understand things later. It was nope, this is just seamless. It just goes right into it. And I was super impressed. I'll tell you one thing. This had my heart racing. I was pacing at points with this book. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. It deserves all the hype.
Right. And I think it kind of did what we felt was really good with Broken Bonds was it wasn't an info dump. You had to trudge through 100 pages before you can actually get into anything. You learned as you went about this world, and it was enough to feed the story, but not too much where you're like, oh, crud, I got to remember all this.
Yeah, it was organic.
And I think very organic. And I think that's a side note why people struggle with House of Earth and Blood, because the first 100 pages is so intense with detail and world building and trudging that a lot of people can't finish that book. So I think this was done really well in that aspect.
That's one of my favorite books that you mentioned. And I have to tell you that I think I picked it up 3 times before I actually got it. And it was because there was all that freaking world building. And I was on the precipice of passing all that. But I restarted it each time I picked it up because it had been too long. And it's definitely well worth it.
I'm still in that book slump. I'm so afraid to read the second book.
Whoa, you haven't read the second book? Oh.
Yeah, so we'll do that buddy read later. We got a list of buddy reads we got going on.
But Fourth Wing. And look what I have, you can't see this podcast, people, but I have a copy. I actually bought and found a copy.
Yeah. And people are going to hate me. I actually have 2 copies right now.
Do you have separate, like different copies from different places?
Yeah, 2 different places. So I bought it from Amazon, and they kept pushing the date back and back and back and back until it was like end of June. And I was like, holy crap, like I'm not going to get this special edition copy. I want this copy. I never wanted a copy so bad in my life. I love sprayed edges, but I can go without it, right? And I freaked out. So I drove 40 minutes to the bookstore. Before I called and like saved that copy for me. They had 2 copies left. I went to the bookstore, 40 minutes, drove back, and the next day Amazon sent me the book.
Isn't that always the way?
Right.
It was funny. Like I put on my Instagram that I was looking for a copy because I had the audio. So I was like, okay, well, if I really enjoy this, I'll go pick up the book. And then I saw it everywhere. So I didn't think that it was going to be an issue. And I learned that only the first editions were going to have the sprayed edges. And I was like, okay, well, I should pick it up pretty soon. Then when I went to the store, it was like, not there. I looked online, not there. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to miss it. Like I could risk it. Order on Amazon, but it's saying it's estimated in July, which probably means it's not the first edition.
It's the regular copy, yeah.
Then I had someone message me who's American, but in another country right now. And she was like, I could send it to you. You can just have my copy because she's moving. And so she's like, I can't take all my books with me. So I'm trying to share the love. And I was like, yes. Then I was out and about. I randomly happened upon the last one in the weirdest way ever. And so I just have one copy because I reached out to her and I was like, someone else can take that copy and I appreciate you, but like, I've got it now. I don't have to wait 2 weeks.
So, interesting fact. I found this out, and it says it on Amazon that the special editions is only going to be available for pre-order for the second book.
I already pre-ordered. I pre-ordered it immediately. I finished it, and I was like, okay, where's this pre-order? I'm not going to miss out this time. We're not going to play around. But I will tell you, this book, I don't even know how to describe this book because I was reading it, and I'm pretty I update on my stories when I read my book, basically, especially if it's a really good one. If it's a really good one and that in some way has got me and I need to talk about it, I'll go onto my stories. And I had a author reach out to me who was apparently friends with this author. And she was like, when you get towards the last few chapters, she's like, I can't remember where it starts, but the last few-ish, start videoing your reactions. And I was like, she wanted to see them. And she was like, I was like, okay, so that tells me stuff is going to go down. There's going to be some possible heartbreak in this, right? That's what my worry was, that one of these dragons was going to die or get injured.
I know. I was waiting for it. And there's a particular dragon in particular. It's like, this is probably a podcast. I probably don't want to give too much spoilers with it just because of the fact that there's a lot of people who are still reading this and I don't want to ruin it. You would think a lot of things that were going to happen didn't happen, but something else totally happens and it shocked the crud out of you. I think that's what really, really is great about it because, I don't always have to be intensely impressed because there's so much out there, but it's always nice to get a book that you're just like, whoa.
Yes.
What?
I am hugely impressed with this because, so we're not doing spoilers, right? Just to clarify, I'm keeping them spoiler free.
Yeah, we'll talk some details, but some of the details that that is the spoilers of all spoilers.
Okay, so the book ends in such a way that you're like, oh, right?
You're right.
It's something that I feel like everyone would see coming, you know what I mean? But because we were just reeling from the intense battle situation that we just chapters long of this intense, I'm worried something's gonna happen, I'm just crying because I foresee things happening kind of situation. My brain couldn't snap and couldn't I was still reeling. I couldn't snap back into regular mode. I was still trying to process and come down from everything. So when a certain line was I'm just going to say this line. It was like, we need to bring her to him. I had no idea, like, what was going to happen or who this, I had no theories, right?
Right.
And my brain was just so busy processing everything that had just happened and trying to calm down from the pacing that I was doing that when it happened, I was completely blown away. She did it, the author did it in such a way that, like, I was so busy over here that I couldn't process what was coming. I didn't even think to try to figure out what was coming next because my mind was so scrambled. And I was super impressed by that because it's something that I feel like we all kind of should have seen coming. It was clear, it was set up in the beginning, and I was just too, that battle was so good. It was just so good. I was too, I don't even know, emotionally distraught, I guess. I don't even...
That's what I love when authors actually do this. They build your side characters so well that if something, anything were to happen, you're angry, you're upset, you're sad, you feel for them. And I love it when when you're like built emotionally in side characters as well. In the dragons, she gave the dragons such a great personality. They're written to be these majestic beings, but they're almost human. Yeah. They think, they have the opinions and all this stuff. So you're rooting for them as well.
Yeah, they're better than human. They're dragon.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, going into this book, I knew that there were supposed to be dragons, but I have read other books that use dragons as like a marketing ploy to like get you in, and you don't actually see any dragons. You might hear about them.
Barely.
Yeah, and then maybe in like the second or third book you get dragons, right? So when we meet the dragons fairly early on, I feel like I was laughing. Like, I was laughing out loud because the personality of this dragon and the sense of humor of this dragon was so hilarious. Like, I have a few of the just like opening lines. I was like, when he was like, "You're bleeding, stop it." I was just like, yeah, because we can just stop it. And it's like, yeah, right? And he's like, "You're making us look bad." And like the "you will trust me" thing, I was just like, I immediately was like, this dragon's my boy. We're cool. Like, I will fight for this dragon at this point, right? The other dragon, I can't remember the names. I don't have them down. I mean, you meet her and you immediately love her. Like, she's my favorite character in this whole book.
I know.
She's my favorite character in the whole book.
I'm very curious about how this dragon is going to play in the rest of the story. Because
I have theories.
Yeah, I have theories too.
Yeah.
I thought that dragon was going to be wiped out by the end of the book, and that was the reveal.
Me too. Me too. 100%. I was crying whenever she came into the last battle. I was like, no! And
she's going to be ignored!
I just started crying, and I was like, I swear, if this dragon, I hate this book if this dragon dies.
And thankfully not, but we'll see what that golden dragon plays a part in the rest of the story.
Since we're doing spoilers, can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end, since she's like a bigger dragon now, I feel like that's a worry for me that one of the dragons may not make it out of the next book or the third book or something, because now she's got 2 fully grown dragons that she can ride and use. And I feel like if one of them dies and the other one's still alive, she'll still live. You know what I mean?
I swear, I think Rebecca, she's ready to like tear our hearts out. Yeah. I know she will.
Or she's playing with us.
She's playing with us because basically in this world, if you bond with a dragon and that dragon dies, the human is not guaranteed to survive. Yeah. The dragon will live on if the human dies. It's not the other way around. So I am curious about if something were to happen to either or, what would happen to her?
I think as long as one of them is alive, she's going to be fine. I think that's going to be the survival. Yeah, I think that's going to be the like, oh no, what's going to happen? But I don't want it to happen. I want both of these dragons to survive. And I don't think it's going to be the younger one. I think it'll end up being the other one that, what's his name too? Why don't I know any of these names? The other dragon, the grumpy dragon that I love.
Right. He's got a hard name. He's got a for sure hard
I feel
name.
like he might be the one that bites it. But I don't want him to, and I will be real mad if it happens. I want it to be a happily ever after where all the dragons make it. And that's just how I feel.
All right. Pausing real quick, and I'm promising we'll get back to it. I love every one of your readers, and I'm in need of your support to help this podcast flourish. Here are the few ways you can help. 1. Subscribe. Subscribing to your favorite platform ensures that you get the latest episodes right away. 2. Rate and review. Leave me a glowing review and rating on your favorite podcast platform of your choice. Your feedback not only is exciting to me, but also helps other fantasy enthusiasts discover this podcast. 3. Share. Spread the word of Booktrovert Reader Podcast. Share these episodes on social media and recommend this book podcast to your friends. Sharing this podcast creates an amazing community of listeners just like you. Make sure to check out the description below to find all my links to my social media. 4. Support through subscriptions. Your support helps me continue making content. In the description below, you will find how to support me on this podcast. By subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing, it will help Booktrovert Reader Podcast get in front of other readers like you. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and make sure to tell me your favorite fantasy book. All right, readers, back to the episode. It's Andrana is the golden dragon, and Tarn
is
for the black dragon.
Okay. All right, so I got those mixed up.
Yeah, same here. So to pace back a little bit, just to share something with you I thought was really awesome was that Violet did have a physical illness, basically. And if you're familiar with the author has EDS, which is Ehlers-Danlos, and which resonates with me because I have Ehlers-Danlos too. So when I was first reading the book, I didn't know. I didn't know anything about this background. And I was like, hey, hold on, that sounds familiar. That sounds familiar. So I did this random search about this, and apparently it's represented in this book with the main character. And I'm very proud of that because, Ehlers-Danlos it's kind of, I think a lot more people have it, but it's not diagnosed properly with a lot of people. So it's awesome to see that, to finally see something like that, because Ehlers-Danlos is just not ever talked about.
Yeah.
So I loved that. And
yeah, that's really awesome. That representation, that's definitely something that you don't see. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that.
Right.
In a book. It's usually like you'll see other things like autism and stuff like that is starting to become more prevalent in like rom-coms.
Right.
In the fantasy world, you generally don't see really much representation at all.
Yeah. Right. Really resonated with me because Violet, even though she was considered weak, fragile, easily broken, she kept going, kept pushing. And I felt like that was a super important message that I grew up with, that even though I grew up with it, I was never told to just let that hinder me, to keep pushing the boundaries and everything. So I felt like that was so strongly represented. And, just want to give cheers to Rebecca for being brave to talk about it in the book and bring awareness.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And then Violet, I kind of like Violet in a way. There's a lot of people talk about there's like trope upon trope in this book.
I love tropes.
I know, right? I think I like seeing her journey throughout the book, learning to grow stronger in her fighting abilities, learning to hone her powers, learn her abilities and things like that. And then managing her expectations of her mother, which is the general of the quadrant of the dragons and everything. So it was interesting to see. What is your thoughts about, Violet, about, well, hopefully no one hates me, Xander?
So Violet, I pretty much liked her instantly. And I will say, what is her friend's name?
Dane.
Okay, there we go. Like, I know the beginning of the words for some reason. I didn't even read the book. Like, I listened to it. You think it'd be the opposite?
Yeah.
So Dane, pretty much I didn't like him from the get-go. I just was like, I see your issue. I see your issue pretty immediately. Like, that's not going to work.
I knew I couldn't trust him at first. Like, I just knew something was going to be up with him the very beginning.
I just didn't like his selfishness and his lack of belief in her.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the support just was not there. And I was like, you're not a friend, bro. You're like, you want to hit it and quit it. You know what I mean? Like, you're not actually a friend. I didn't care much for Dane. Xander, or what is his name? Xandon? I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, and everyone...
There's no punctuation, guys.
Which is so crazy, because in the book, I'm telling you, like, this book is gorgeous. These maps and everything that they put in here are absolutely stunning, and it's so crazy that they didn't put pronunciations in here.
I think it could have really benefited off of that.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, fantasy is historically like you can say it one way this whole time and it's totally pronounced a different way.
Yeah. What is it, like Reese, Rysand, Rysand, like all those.
It's Rysand in my heart.
Yeah. But I liked him. You know that he's going to be the guy who...
The love interest.
Yeah, the guy who, like, seems bad, and he does seem bad. Yeah, honestly, I think at one point, doesn't he just murder someone? Doesn't he, like, during training, just, like, straight up break someone's neck? I was like,
oh, no, that was a teacher who did that.
Okay, that was a teacher. I was like... But, like, it was pretty obvious to me early on that he was... While he was saying he wants to kill Violet, he had the opportunity to do things and wasn't. So I was like, all right, I'm interested to learn more. The dragon situation with, I don't know how spoilery we want to get, so this is just a preface. Like, the two dragons, how her dragon and his dragon are, I guess, mated. I really loved that, and I loved that they have, like, a frenzy, and that he was very, like... You're gonna make mistakes during the frenzy. Let's fix this right now. Let's try to make this like the not a mistake. Like, let's avoid what I went through.
Well, okay. I will say this. This is a little bit of my pet peeve. Just a little one, right? It's when they finally get together and you're like, thank goodness. And he's like, I've always loved you since the parapet. And I'm like, didn't you guys just feel like you guys were mortal enemies just because of your guys' background and all this stuff? And now he's like, I loved you since then. And I'm like, did you though? Did you?
I think maybe he loved her and just only now realized that that's what it was.
Yeah. It's just the way it was worded. It was like a sappy rom-com moment. Like the first moment I laid eyes on you, I fell in love with you. And I'm just like,
I love your rom-com though, and I was in my rom-com era when I read this, so I probably was like eating it with a spoon, like, yes, please.
Oh, no. How would you describe the world building in this book in particular? You said it was, it was well developed and everything. So what was your favorite part about it? You said that dragons was introduced and it was really introduced well, and I'm like, I agree, because I haven't read a dragon book this good since Aragon. By Christopher Poloni. And I haven't, there's, like you said, they introduce it just to get you hooked, and they're hardly mentioned.
Yep.
I agree with that. It's a very strong point of this book, and I loved it. What would you describe in the world building in this book with the magic, with the school?
In terms of world building, it didn't feel like heavy world building, but it was. I don't really know how to put it in. Someone who doesn't like world building will still love this book and it not even realize it's happening. It was kind of like an effortless, this is the world we live in. It's coming up organically during the story about certain things and how it works. There wasn't any like paragraphs where it was just like, let me give you all this history so this one sentence will make sense. It was, I don't know how any other way to say it, except you were just kind of like transported there. Like, it was like you were just going along with the characters and it was no big deal. In terms of the dragons are characters in this book. They are important, like, side characters in this book. They're developed, and I only want to get to know them more.
Right.
And there's a lot of untapped. She definitely did that. You know how they say, like, just show them like the iceberg and have like a lot underneath in terms of like writing. She definitely did that with the dragons specifically. So we do have like some story on a little bit of them, but it's very clear that even the school and even like humans in general don't really know the dragon's culture. A lot of it is specific to
being a writer.
Humans don't need to know this, you know what I mean? And not even my writer needs to know this always. But very quickly, her dragons trust her with things that are like, humans don't matter. It's going to be my dragon, like my dragon committee that decides if this is sticking or not. Humans can just suck it. But he's very quick to just kind of tell her how things are. And I think he even lets slip a couple things that people aren't supposed to know. I do find it weird though, and maybe I'm misremembering, but the way that they know that this dragon is hers is by knowing the real name, and the only people that are supposed to know it is supposed to be her and like the person she gives the name to. But it was very clear that other people knew this dragon's name. At least for me, it felt like it was like, so I didn't understand that. Maybe I just missed it and they called him something else. But that seemed like the only thing that kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. It was kind of like,
Right.
wait, how does that make sense? Because it sounds as if everyone kind of knows these dragons' names in general. But I may have to go through and reread to verify that.
Right. I get what you're saying now, because there's like their dragon's true name that only the writer knows, but then they have to kind of like tell the scribe or something like that to record who this dragon belongs to. So yeah, that is a part that's a little glossed over a little bit. So like, what do they do with that information other than like, hey, this dragon belongs to this person? If this name is so closely guarded, why would you put it on something that could be accessible to a lot of people?
I don't know. It just seemed odd not odd, but it just seemed like something that wasn't really gone into and seems like very easily fibbed. And maybe in one of the next ones, we'll get to see someone fibbing about knowing a dragon.
Right.
But anyway, so that was, for me, the world building was great. I think we've only scratched it.
Right.
Which may also be why the world building was so seamless, because there wasn't a ton, but really she's made like a completely different world. And what I really found interesting is the author said that she's able to create whatever world she wants, right? So she's created a world where, you know, Violet isn't considered weak because she's female. There are female generals, there are female, like that has nothing, there's no like sexism.
Right, which is great.
Yeah, or like violence against women in the book because they're women.
Or they have a tragic past, you know, that moves them forward. And, you know, I think I remember reading for one person that people are getting tired that the whole motivation of the female main character is because they have a tragic past that a man did to them or something like that. This is not the case. She's just trying to live life here and manage family expectations.
Yeah. And just the struggle of like her every day, you know what I mean? And she has like, she may doubt herself, but she doesn't have a lot of really negative self-talk, which I like. And you usually see that a lot with your female.
I can't do it. And I'm just, you know, I'm weak. And instead, she's always challenging the narrative.
Yeah. And she's like, how do I do this? How can I do this?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I know you think I'm fragile, but, you know, she's like, you know, she's accepted her state of where she is physically, but she's like choosing to not let it define her as a person. Yeah. I think that's what's really cool about female strength is being portrayed in a book like this, because sometimes if they're having a pity party or if they're having this negative self-talk about themselves, one book we read, Broken Bonds, was the cattiness between women. That's annoying. She acknowledged cattiness, but she wasn't like dwelling on it too long. She's like, I got to focus on surviving. I got to focus on getting better. I'm focusing on, I want a dragon. It wasn't even about proving her mom wrong either. It was just proving herself that she can do it. And that's what I love, because it's all about the inner monologue of how you're moving yourself forward, how you're telling yourself you can do it. And I think that's powerful, because she really didn't need Xander telling her she could do it.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know that I can't remember. Yeah, I think even like when she was trying to, this is a little bit of a spoiler for just a heads up, even when she was in a position to have to stand up for someone who seemingly was going to get murdered or killed, we'll say that, it was the dragon. You know, and that scene.
Man.
So when that happened, he just kind of watched it, and like he did do a little something, but it was very much like, you know, he's concerned, but he was like impressed, and like he didn't sit there and like, I don't know. It was just it was a good relationship between the two. I didn't feel like it was that let me teach you all the ways and like let me make you like a better like person, like some man coming in to do it. She kind of already had everything she needed. Now he did like help her do a couple things, like the frenzy, blocking out the frenzy and stuff, but it didn't feel like that wasn't something that she was capable of on her own. He just kind of was like, you've never done this, so let me show you how to do it.
Yeah, she wasn't taught. And I guess in that role, when you get your powers, you're supposed to channel it. I guess to be able to get in those classes, you got to channel it first, you know, or reveal your powers. And so he was like, you know, you haven't done this yet. So she's like, well, if they just let me in those classes, I would be ready for it.
Yeah, exactly. You know? It's not that it's not that I'm not capable. It's not that like, it's just that I haven't been given the opportunity. But yeah, I liked Violet a lot. I will say that my favorite characters in this book are the dragons, with the secondary of, I really like Violet, but the dragons are my favorite.
I don't know, just because it's typical fantasy, I was kind of expecting one of Violet's closer friends to be the one to backstab and betray her. Maybe it will happen in the future, but it didn't happen that way. So that was kind of good.
He did, though, didn't he?
Oh,
was it?
Okay. Maybe I'm thinking it's Rihanna, or Rihanna's the one I thought she was going to like backstab her.
Okay.
And then the one other friend I did see coming just because of his abilities. I saw that one coming.
I didn't see to the extent. Like, he went from like, I want to protect you and like, I love you, but we can't be together, oh my God, to good luck. like, do you, boo? You about to die? Like, what a jerk!
Right, and it just sucks because I'm like, man, how long? I would be like, my first question would be like, how long have you been doing that?
Yeah,
I was watching this one review, which I have to send you. She was kind of like, I enjoy this book, but there's some kind of things about this plot and everything that just did not make sense. It didn't make sense that Violet got really upset with Xander over him lying per se, but she didn't really get upset about Dane and what he did.
Doesn't that all come out towards the very end? So we don't really get to see her reaction to Dane because she hasn't seen Dane yet. You know what I mean?
Right, that's true.
I feel like,
I guess she was just, maybe it was like one of those situations where she was angry about one thing, but she was projecting on another person.
Yeah.
Because that's the person that she's currently angry with.
Yeah.
So
the person in front of her. Yeah. I think when she sees Dane, that might change, but I think that a lot happened at the end of the book. So I give her a little bit of a break with not being mad at Dane yet, because I think it's coming. I think it'll come.
Yeah, I think it's the confrontation's coming. We'll see. Well, thank you for listening to my podcast. Follow me on Instagram for more updates and to participate in future polls. And if you have a moment, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your opinion is valuable to me. So thank you again for supporting me, and happy reading. Thank you, readers, for listening to my podcast on fantasy books. I hope you're enjoying the content and finding it helpful in discovering new books to read. If you have a moment, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at @BookTrovertReader to stay updated on new episodes and other book-related content. Thank you again for your support, and happy reading!